This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Well, thank you so much, Parker, and welcome to Time Signatures. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and this episode is something really special to me because I get to introduce you all to a woman I have a great deal of respect for. So much so that I've added the organization that she represents as one of my reverse sponsorships on the back wall of this podcast. The National Women in Blues was formed to support, edify, mentor, and promote female blues artists. It all began when Michele Seidman went to a large blues festival featuring 55 acts on 4 stages, but only 4 women on the bill for that event. Now, obviously, we're going to delve much deeper into that initial event, but it set in motion a mission for Michele that she continues today. In fact, the National Women in Blues became a registered 501c3 on November 24th, 2015. So much to talk about, and we're going to just go ahead and get rolling. Michele Seidman, welcome to Time Signatures. How are you?
I'm hanging in. Thanks for having me, Herb.
Yeah, you just got done with a really, really big move, didn't you?
Yes.
So you're breathing a sigh of relief at this point, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I haven't unpacked yet. I'm not even in my own home right now. I've yet to unpack everything at the new place.
You'll get there, trust me. So, Michele, obviously you have a love and a passion for the blues. Talk about your earliest memories of the genre. Where did it all start for you?
Funny thing is, I didn't realize where it all started for me until I got older. I used to joke that the blues chased me. It always chased me. I look back and I remember a concert when I was like 19, and it was Johnny Winter. And
Okay.
I remember feeling so at peace with the rhythms. The years later, I was dating a guy that was really into jazz, but he was also into, some of the old school blues, and he'd play it and I would just peace out, But I had been classically and chorally trained, opera prodigy sister. I had done, theater and learned how to do, the standards and the belt and scat and, things like that. And had been in an alt rock band and a comedy cabaret band. And eventually started my own blues band when I was 40. And it was not long after that I was talking to the daughter of a woman that worked for my family when I was young. And I had to ask her, I said, because her mother, Bernice, was sort of like my second mom.
Sure.
And my mom had polio. And so there were things she couldn't physically do. So we hired Bernice to do those things. But like her kids would come to our house, we would go to their house. My mom gave her one of our purebred dog puppies. They were family. And a few years after Bernice had passed away, I spoke to one of her daughters on the phone and I asked her, I was like, is there any chance that your mom used to sing blues to me? And she's like, oh, she loved her gospel and her blues. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I believe that I was hearing it when I was really little. Plus, my parents played a lot of swing and era when I was growing up. So, I listened to Jimmy Dorsey and
Sure.
Cab Calloway. And I used to try to be Louis Armstrong, which technically there's no way for me to do, but I tried. I used to walk around trying to sing like him. And then when my sister's voice coach heard me doing it over the phone, told my mom to make me stop. So I tried to be Pearl Bailey. That didn't work either. But the blues has, I think, chased me my entire life. And it wasn't until I was 40 that it was like, I'm in my musical home.
Yeah. Any favorite blues songs or performers from those early years? Maybe a song that you just had to hear over and over again?
No.
Okay.
But I'll explain. I have a hard time claiming anything as a favorite. If you ask me what my favorite color is, I've got 3 of them.
Okay.
So, is there any one? No. Are there songs that I will listen to over and over again? Yes. But some of my earlier blues songs were more of the big band blues, Brother
Sure,
Can You
yeah.
Spare a Dime, and gosh, I'm blanking. But as soon as you ask, I'm blanking. I'm completely blanking.
That's all right. That's okay.
It's too early. That's what you get for doing an early interview with me.
All right. I'm going to try to make this one a little more easy for you. Michelle, I'd like you to talk about that concert in October of 2006, the one that set your foot on the path that you're traveling today. What were the details of that?
Well, I have yet to publicly state what festival it was,
Okay.
but I was really excited to go because it was sort of in the heart of the blues world. I consider like Memphis, Arkansas, Mississippi. That's like the beginning points, and it was in that area. And I had flown in. I was so excited, and I went to look at the roster because a lot of people had told me that I stylized like a man. So I was like, I'm going to go find some women. I'm going to go learn from some women. I'm going to go watch some women. And then I only found 4 on the lineup. And this was one of those festivals that also had people playing on the streets up and down between the stages. And
Okay.
I started finding women playing on the street that were really talented, and including Juke Joint Judy and
Wow.
Valerie June, Big Red and the Soul Benders. And I was like, these women are so great. Why aren't they on these stages? And for the whole time I was there, I just kept thinking, why are they on the street? Why are they not on the stages? Why aren't these venues booking them? And it was very frustrating because at the time I was still a blues performer, and
Sure.
I cannot tell you how many times I contacted some, a blues festival, and they go, "Oh, well, we booked our woman." Wait, aren't you supposed to be booking 16 bands and you booked your woman? Or aren't you putting 20 bands up and you've booked your woman? It's like, okay, so your representation of female blues is one woman. And
Wow.
it was frustrating because only about 6 months before, I'd had a blues manager tell me nobody wanted to hear women sing the blues, and all I could think is that's not true. My band pulled in people. I saw crowds around Juke Joint Judy and Valerie June and Big Red.
Yeah.
Big circles of crowds around them. Yeah, they wanted to hear us. And so, being there at that festival that fall of 2006, I got a little angry.
Yeah.
And it wasn't while I was there, it was actually on the way home that I said, I have to do something about this. So I did a little research and went from there.
So at what point of the day did you decide that something had to be done to correct or balance the scales, if you will, and that you would be the person to get the proverbial ball rolling?
I'd like to claim that I'm the one that got the ball rolling, but I wasn't the first, because on the flight home, I started thinking, wait a second, I have a venue that I was going to do something at, set up in about 6 weeks, and I haven't canceled it yet. Could I do this? And I immediately went home and I got online and I started researching women in blues. And the only thing I could really find was Sunny Hess out in the northwestern part of the U.S. She had been doing events of female blues artists in that region of the country for a number of years at that point. And I was like, well, if she can do that there, why can't we do this on a larger level? Why can't we do it, make something national? Why can't we bring in artists from other countries? Why can't we, put more focus on the women? And so it was within a day or two of getting home that I started contacting people like Valerie June and Big Red and the Soul Benders and Juke Joint Judy, because I had made sure to get all their names and numbers, and said, if I can get you here and get you a little bit of money, because I didn't know what I was going to be able to, put together,
Right.
would be interested in being part of the very first National Women in Blues Festival. And they all said yes. And we also had the Grit Pixies, and our headliner was Michelle Lundeen, the Queen of Steam, for our very first one. And I brought in as an opener beautiful woman by the name of Rose Lucas and her husband Charlie. They were sort of our local grandparents of the blues.
Okay.
So she actually opened all 3 years of the event. And if we'd continued going, she would have until she passed, because,
Wow.
I wanted to, even though we were doing a national event, I wanted to pay homage to our local grandma of the blues.
Sure. Now, I wanted to ask you, how are the current slate of women in the blues responding to your efforts on their behalf?
Surprisingly well.
Okay.
I'm always worried that, that they're, not going to be happy, or that they're not, they don't want to necessarily be involved. And then every year we do the event, and I'm surprised by some of the responses and how many of the women have connected with each other, and how they've started sort of buddying up, and they'll bring each other to play in their territories. And I've had women come to me and say that being part of our showcase launched them, and or opened a lot of doors for them. And that's the whole idea.
Sure.
It's giving them, a stage and an event that is growing in its, fan base. First started doing it. I was on MySpace, and I think we had 1,500 followers on MySpace. Moved it over
Wow.
to Facebook. Now we
Yeah.
have almost 10,000 in our group, and more than a 44% engagement rate, which is pretty high
Yes.
for a Facebook group. Meaning that the majority of the people in there really do support what these women are doing, and the women are involved too. The women are in there posting and commenting and getting involved, and occasionally you'll see them asking each other for advice or offering mentorship to each other, things of that nature, which I absolutely love. So the women seem to be responding really well. We, as you know, we do a lottery for the showcase.
Yep.
We wanted to get politics and favoritism out when selecting who was going to be on the show.
Good.
So the lottery was born as a way to give everybody an opportunity, and then we pull names. So we never know exactly who we're going to get, other than who we pick as our featured entertainer. And
Sure.
the caliber of women that enter the lottery every year floors me. I mean, I see some that I'm like, I'm not familiar with them. I'll go check them out. Well, they're pretty cool. But then I'll see some that I'm like, holy crap. In a perfect world, I'd be booking you in every, and, which is also a little frustrating sometimes, because, when we pull, right, we get great women, but don't always get my pick. There's been a couple years where I picked out a name and I had to contain myself because it was somebody I really wanted in it. And I was like, I actually
cool.
picked it blind pick. But like this past year, some of the people that were like the ones that I secretly hoped would get picked didn't get picked. But it was funny because our chairman of the board, who recently passed, somebody who he wanted to get picked got picked. One of the supporters who helps us every year, their pick got picked. And one of the people who helped me start all of this originally, Terry Robbins, somebody she wanted, got picked too. And these were all random picks. So it's really funny how, pulling it out, it's like, I know there's some names in there that I'm like, I would literally, my mind if they're on the stage, and their name sometimes gets picked and sometimes doesn't. And I get nauseous every year doing a lottery, just so you know. Every year when I'm pulling it, I'm actually sick to my stomach, because having been a performer, I know how I would feel sitting there watching and waiting and hoping. And so that's my brain's, I think, in the same space that the artists are, where it's like, oh, I hope. But, you get 60 or 80 entries and you're pulling, 5 from in IBC, 5 from out of IBC, and 1 youth act. So there's going to be plenty who don't get picked. And yeah, it's really weird, but the caliber of women that want to be involved and that have been involved. And, we've had Sean Murphy and Teeny Tucker were some of our first featured artist MCs when we went to Memphis.
Very nice.
When we were still doing the festival, we had Deanna Bogart and Candy Cane and E.G. Kite. And I mean, we've been very, very lucky with that. And women like Terry O'Dobby and Erica Brown and Anika Chambers has been on our stage. We've had, Keisha Pratt. And I mean, just the list just keeps going on. And I've got a wish list of women that I hope we will get on our stage at one point or another.
Very cool.
Yeah, the women are responding well.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And you referred to your chairman of the board. I'd like you to talk about the loss of your chairman recently, because I watched that unfold, and my condolences to you and to the entire Women in Blues family.
Yeah, that was really hard, because early on when I started this, I kind of felt alone in it. It was Kyle Deibler and Terry Robbins are the two people that early on were like, here we are. For years, Terry helped me with all of the press and posters and stuff. She still helps. She still supports. She sponsors. She's amazing. And Kyle started not only, supporting, he flew here for the second Women in Blues Festival to help MC.
Wow.
We'd only known each other at that point 6 months. But he believed in it enough that, I'm sorry, it was a year and a half, because he couldn't make it to the first one. It was the second one. But we'd known each other a year and a half, and mostly, by phone and seeing each other at IBC. And he flew in just to help MC and help run things some. And it was kind of interesting, because in 2008, the mortgage crisis kind of killed everything. And that was our last, all the small festivals or new festivals in my area basically shut down, and it was kind of sad. And then what happened was in 2013, was actually 2012 technically, at the end of 2012, Kyle calls me up and says, "Hey, Michele, if I get you a plane ticket to go to Memphis, do you think you can put on a Woman in Blues event?" I was like, I think I can. I was a little nervous, going, I'm not sure. And so he got me the ticket, and I got on the Facebook group, and I said, hey, because I wasn't going to try to do a showcase or, something like that the first time, because I didn't know who'd be there, what would be going on. I was like, what do you women think about doing a Women in Blues jam? And they were all like, yes. And we got the Center for Southern Folklore, and we went and did it there. It was funny because Kyle couldn't even be at the first one, because we did it on a Friday, and he was at the KBAs. And, he was checking on me. How's it going? I'm like, I don't know. And then we packed the place, and Kyle was like, I'm proud of you. I'm like, thank you. And when we finally moved on to Beale Street, we moved to Thursday. So Kyle also became our stage manager. And yet he'd be in, because we do a private group every year for the women that are in it. And Kyle would be in there, and he'd be getting their stage plots and, prompting them for information, and he'd get all that coordinated. And when we became a nonprofit, he was one of the first people on the board, and not long after, he became the chairman of the board. And Kyle was not just my friend. He was not just the chairman of the board. He was one of the kindest, most genuine people that you'd ever want to meet. Like, everybody that knew Kyle loved him. Everybody felt like his best friend, with reason, because Kyle treated everybody with that kind of respect. And Kyle had written reviews for Blues Bites. He'd been in charge of one of the Arizona, I can't remember which one of the Arizona Blues Societies. He was very involved when he moved to Colorado with the Colorado Blues Society. Not sure which one. I deal with hundreds of them, so remembering sometimes those details slip out of my head. But Kyle was just always there for everyone. And Kyle was every year at the Blues Music Awards to help Joe Whitmer. He and Joe were genuinely in the best friend category. They could argue and fight, and then sit down and have a beer together, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Kyle was always there. I went through medical crap a number of years ago, like really bad, and state of depression that went along with 27 medical conditions that turned within 2 years, that turned into a 7-year ordeal. And during the worst of it, Kyle called me every night at 10 p.m. to check on me. Every night at 10 p.m. And when he was recently hospitalized back in December, I was a pain in the butt. I was calling him not every night at 10 p.m. because it was late, especially at 10 p.m. here. It would have been earlier there, but nurses and doctors going in and out. So I would call him in the early day, try to get him before his lunchtime. And and bug him and try to do for him what he had done for me. Be that
Sure.
pain in the butt that's there all the time, reminding him he's loved and needed and wanted. And we thought he was going to be okay. He actually, during the 2025 showcase the night before, he's on the phone with me because when he couldn't come because of the health stuff, we had arranged for another artist to help stage manage.
Sure.
That would work. So we actually ended up getting another artist, Kelly Baker, who's an incredible talent. She ended up helping stage manage and wrangle the artist. But Kyle's like on the phone with me, and he's like getting me the files to get printed out and all of that good stuff. And then during the event, he called me a couple times, and I called him a couple times. And then the morning after called, because Kyle was always getting on me about not accepting help, trying to do everything on my own. And so I actually let people help me. And so on Friday morning, I had called him and said, Kyle, you'll be proud of me. I let people help. I let people help. And he was laughing about it. And he usually called me Shell instead of using my full name. He'd be like, I'm proud of you, Shell. Good for you, Shell. And it made me feel really good that, he was proud because
Sure.
Kyle was one hell of a human being, Just
Yes.
before he died, he had written some checks to some charities.
Wow.
Yeah, they were found when somebody went to check everything after he passed away and got them mailed out for him because they knew that he would want that. I mean,
Well, sure.
Kyle had everybody's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Michele, I also want to talk to you about another gentleman that you've been working with, related to the showcase, Endless Blues Mick Colassa, or as we know him affectionately, Mississippi Mick, because he's from Michigan and lived for many years in Mississippi. But talk about your relationship with Mick and what he means to what you do each year.
Uncle Mick.
Uncle Mick.
Yeah.
And for bonus points, who gave him that moniker, Uncle Mick?
Oh, that I don't know. I've just heard him called that for years.
Christone Kingfish was one of the earliest people to refer to him because he met Kingfish when he was about, I think he said 8 or 9.
Oh,
And he referred to him as Uncle Mick. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's fantastic. I love knowing that story. Here's the funny part. I don't remember if he reached out to me or somebody told me I should reach out to him the first time because we were sort of, as far as sponsorship goes, because had to get me to Memphis, have to pay for posters, flyers, press, blah, blah, blah. There's money needs to be spent. And we, didn't have a big budget. We've always been a grassroots, all volunteer kind of organization.
Sure.
And I remember the first time I talked to him about it and I was like, and we're looking for this much, which technically isn't a lot, but to me felt like, asking, for the moon. And Mick's like, okay. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure you get title credit on everything. Okay, good. And I'll have, flyers and stuff and lobby cards. You'll be on all of those too. You'll be tagged in everything. You'll be on all of our press. It will, say presented by, Endless Blues, National Women in Blues. And we'll, put links and et cetera. And he's like, okay. And I think one of the things that I loved about it too was that he didn't like start grilling me or questioning me or second guessing me, which that happens a lot when you're a female doing things. And Mick didn't. Mick had already been sort of, I think, observing us and deciding whether or not he wanted to be involved. And he came on board, and he's been our sponsor for multiple years now. I want to say 5 or 6.
Okay.
Maybe 7. I'd have to actually look at all the posters to mark which year he started.
Okay.
I know it was after we got onto Beale Street, and he's also been good at giving advice. And now that I've lost Kyle, I've actually told Mick he's kind of in trouble because I'll be contacting him for advice and questioning him because he's got a world of wisdom. He's a
he does.
Very smart man. He's also very talented. And it's kind of interesting. I find that you get a lot of people who are very talented and a lot of people who are very smart, but they're not always the same person.
Right, right.
And when I find those gems, I'm like, oh my goodness. And Mick has, he's had our back, and he shows up. Even the year of the ice storm, he couldn't get there on time, but he did get there. He made sure he got there. He's usually sitting right up front. He talks to artists. He gives them advice. The women will come off the stage and have conversations with him. He has backed some of them, helped them with their albums or getting introduced to people and things of that nature. So it's not like he's just throwing a little money and going, here you go. He's actually not only just putting in money, he's actually giving some of his time, his wisdom,
Yes.
energy to these artists. And that's invaluable. Absolutely. Like, that's priceless.
Now, I happen to know that Mick just produced his first album for somebody else. Was actually for Sunny Blue and the Moons, who is a Michigan band up here, a member of the Women in the Blues Showcase, or I'm sorry, a member of the Women in the Blues. So yeah, he's been an invaluable resource to help so many people on so many different levels. But I happen to know that in addition to your national level events, such as which just occurred in Memphis during the IBC, you also are tied in with some smaller regional events as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it's been very interesting. Over the last decade, we've had multiple women in blues type events pop up around the country, even overseas.
Yeah.
We helped inspire Andrea Marr, got the Melbourne Blues Society to start a Women in Blues thing. And then down in Florida, Bridget Kelly Fick got one started. There's actually two different Women in Blues things going on down in Florida. Another one that Tina Terry is involved with. And then the Northwest Florida Blues Society. I hope I've got that right. I might not. And then Sunny Blue and Nick Coco are doing some Women in Blues events. One, I think, was it last night? And another one, is it next week or the week after? I'd have to look at the calendar.
They actually had their first stage appearance with their new band last evening in, I believe it was Royal Oak.
Oh, and that was the album release. The actual Women in Blues is not until the 7th, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be emceeing the one on the 7th at the Token Lounge in Westland. And then Mick, as we just referred to him, Mississippi Mick, is going to be emceeing the event on the 8th down in Three Rivers. So back-to-back Women in Blues showcase events that I think are just incredible. And they do coincide with the release of their new album, which just hit the streets yesterday on the 31st. And of course, we're dating this a little bit, so my apologies. But I'm kind of looking forward to it because I get to meet 17-year-old Kiersey Jolie, who is actually on the album. She's coming up from Memphis. And if I'm not mistaken, she actually competed at the IBC this past year, in 25.
She competed in 25. She was also on our showcase stage in 24. And this year, I thought it was so sweet. Kiersey said, I'd like to volunteer. I was like, I've got a perfect spot for you. We actually put her with the posters so she would meet all the other women as they had to come and sign and get a chance to network with the other female blues artists. And she was just an amazing addition to have there. But yeah, that's Kiersey has been on our stage, and you'll love her. She's not only talented, she's a sweet human being. So yeah, you're gonna love Kiersey.
I've actually heard that. I believe it was from Mick, and I also heard it from Nick because he was down at IBC this year. Now, I noticed that in addition to your Women in Blues showcases, you also held a Women in Blues seminar last year at 24. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, and it's something that we'd love to do more of to coincide with our mentorship. But to be honest, I really think I need to, because I used to run seminars for a college. So I thought, I can do this really easy. But it's very different doing it online when you have multiple instructors back to back, people running over time, things, and some information getting doubled up. Sometimes doubled up information is not a bad thing because sometimes you hear it from one person, it doesn't click, and you hear it from another and it does. But it's, when I was doing them in the colleges, I had people going from classroom to classroom, so they weren't overlapping, right? So I think I need to learn more before we do a bunch more. But what we did was we put together a seminar with a female lawyer, a female accountant, and a female promoter. We had Pamela Evers. We had Spring. Oh my goodness, Spring Brooks. Yes. Wait, no, not Spring. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm definitely having a day to day with memory stuff. But Ann Bello was part of it. And hold on,
Okay.
I'm cheating because sometimes the best thing I can do is run to the one of the pages and go, what was it? Who was it?
Yeah.
Because I've got too much information in my head is part of the problem. For years, I thought that I was having memory issues when I couldn't remember people's names. And then it dawned on me that that particular year, I'd met more than 2,000 people. Well, hello,
Wow.
no wonder I'm not remembering names.
Wow.
Every year, go to IBC and I meet, hundreds of people every year when I'm there. And this is why this comes in handy. Thank you. It was Prayer Bailey. Thank you. Yeah, because Prayer Bailey, aside from being an artist, is also an accountant.
Okay.
So was able to go over, stuff about, their accounting and their bookkeeping and taxes and things. And Bella was able to go over stuff about music distribution and promotions. And Pamela Evers was able to go over legal, documents and creating contracts and things of that nature. So, part of that, is fitting in the mission of mentoring and helping these women do their own thing. Because a lot of people don't realize, and I sometimes have to explain this to artists too. They'll contact me about, oh, well, can you give me a booking agent? Can you do this? Can you do that? Here's the thing. No, I can't. If you haven't gotten your band to a certain level yet, nobody's going to touch you. And,
right.
But that's with reason, because they have to invest a lot of time and energy to make money. I was an agent years ago. I worked 90 hours a week. And this is back in the 90s, and I generated $150,000 in income for my performers. I made 15 grand for the year working 90 hours a week.
Oh my God.
And by the way, about 5 grand of that went into, because back then we didn't have cell phones, right? Well, not cheap ones, long distance phone bills. I had $5 long distance phone bills. I had faxes that had to go out. I had to ship talent books out to different people around the country, so about 5,000 of it was expenses. And so I made, in my pocket for working 90 hours a week, about 10 grand, and rented out all my spare bedrooms so I could make sure I could pay bills and eat.
Sure.
So a lot of, unless you're lucky enough to be booking the biggest talents, you're not making a lot of money. So these booking agents, when they get contacted by, the local and regional bands, are like, no, because you have to build your following first. And so that was the hope by teaching, having seminars like that, and hopefully doing more in the future. We teach these artists how to get themselves to the level where somebody else will take some of that off their plate.
There you go.
But early on, it's on our plates.
Michele, here's the most important part of this chat. Where can people go to find out more about the National Women in Blues, maybe make a donation, join your cause, or maybe buy some merch?
Well, here's the interesting part. We are nationalwomeninblues.com. And then on Facebook, we have 2 places they can locate us. One is National Women in Blues Group. That's where we're very active with almost 10,000 people. We also have the National Women in Blues Inc. page. And it's not as active. We share stuff from the group to the page. That was more of a placeholder so nobody else could steal our thunder. And it links back to the group where things are the most active. They can make donations through our website. There's also a contact where they can send a message that gets forwarded to me. And well, there's also, I think, if depending on where you click, you might forward to somebody else if you're trying to reach a different member of our board. But the majority of that mail gets directed to me. So if there's something specific you want to know, specific questions, just go through that contact link, send a message. It'll get forwarded right to me. I check that daily. And for donations, we are a 501, so they can make them through the website, or if they want to make a larger donation and they want it to be a little more secure, we have other methods where if they contact me, I can direct them to a private email for PayPal, which automatically sends them the letter that says, thank you for your tax deductible contribution,
Nice.
things like that. So there's multiple ways of going about it.
Very good. Michele Seidman, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you're doing for blues artists. It's really important to give them platforms where they can be seen and heard outside of just their performance. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my sincere thanks to Michele Seidman, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
I'm crying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.
Baby, I'm